Hi there, welcome back to Not Another Budget. I'm Nicole, and on this channel I'm attempting to cash budget my way out of debt, fix several years of financial misbehaviour, and navigate a poop storm, which is just life at the minute. And there's a couple of things we need to get out of the way. First off, 2010 subscribers. Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. That's amazing. And I completely missed the tick over. I was sitting on like 1998. And then the next time I checked, I was on like 2010, and I was like, what? When did that happen? Thank you genuinely so much for subscribing and liking. The grand target this year is 2,500 subscribers. So yeah, hitting 2,000 it's like another milestone that you've just like ticked past, and that's fantastic, and it's good news in a time of poop. So genuinely thank you, and thank you to everyone as well who's shown my videos some love. And a special thank you to everyone who has utilised the various links that I have left down below, be that coffee, buy me a coffee, Vinted, or my Shopify, notanotherbudget.com. Like, I don't really have words apart from thank you. It means a lot. And everyone who's kind of in the comments, like, yeah, thank you. Genuinely, thank you so much. There's a couple of people I need to get back to. I'm just going through and catching up on that because I've not been overly obsessing on my emails. I took a step back from that yesterday because I believe I mentioned in my last video that I was at the point where I was checking my emails every 10 minutes. And yesterday I took a step back and was like, no. Little bit of an update on the house is there's news, but there's not no news. There's no news, but there's news, but there's not really. I did actually manage to get through to someone at the letting agency who I knew, who was the letting agent who looks after me, and I was like, what on earth's going on? Blank being their name. And he went, I don't know. Which is never comforting. In short, my landlord, and I'm not the only tenant of his that this is affecting, has a pretty sizable portfolio. Not every tenancy comes up at exactly the same time, but there's apparently a cluster of us together. And my landlord, for about a month now, hasn't responded to emails, hasn't responded to phone calls, and the letting agency have had to resort to sending a legal letter requesting follow-up, because I'm not the only tenant who is within their 30-day window who doesn't know what's happening. Now, the letting agent's advice to me was stay put, don't do anything, continue to pay the $9.50 that you've been, instructed to pay. What will happen at the end of this period is I will go on to that rolling 30-day contract as discussed. And as I then pointed out to him, okay, but if he does get back in contact with you and he wants a rent increase, if he doesn't get back to us by the end of today, notifying me of that fact, then he can't have his rent increase for another year. I said, so if he comes back and realises he needs to put the rent up even by £50 or 100 or 150 or 200, whatever it is, I said, there is then nothing stopping him, because he's missed this window, from giving me a 2-month notice to leave, taking the property back, refreshing it, which is what we've discussed we're going to do anyway this summer, and then taking on new tenants with an increased rent. I said, so we discussed the fact that my preference is still for a 12-month contract and my uneasiness with that, and he just reiterated the fact that, they like having me as a tenant, etc., and they would look to move me into one of their properties. The difficult thing for me is, how do I say to someone, I'm not going to pass your credit check, and there's not a guarantor there anymore, and I'm not going to pass your affordability either, because my most recent wage slips that I would need to provide as evidence show a reduced wage because I'm on 50% pay. So whilst it was good to speak to someone, it's incredibly concerning to find out that my landlord has just gone on a disappearing act. And I said to the letting agent, like, well, has he gone on holiday? And he said, well, the thing is, he said, because of the size of his portfolio, he is a business. He said, so we always have out of office responses when he's on holiday, or when he's non-contactable, or when there's stuff going on. He said, this is unusual behaviour, but he can't ignore a legal letter for very long before action needs to be taken. He said, and ultimately you are in a legal agreement with this individual who is coming to an end. The difficulty is for them, is that I'm fairly sure I've got a wasp's nest growing outside of my house because for some random reason I have a Christmas tree growing in my front garden. It was here before I moved in, I don't know how, and the wasps have made themselves at home. Unfortunately for the letting agents is they can't action anything to be done there because the landlord isn't there to do that and give the go-ahead. Same for measuring up for carpets, which the letting agent was like, look, I will, our carpet guy, he has been trying to get hold of you. And I'm a millennial. I don't answer my phone. And if you're an unknown number, like if you're not saved as a contact, I'm not answering my phone to you. And even if you are saved as a contact, I'm still not answering my phone. I don't do phone calls. Cannot express this clearly enough. He said, so go ahead and do that. And I was just like, going ahead and speak to him. And I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, but if the landlord's not around to action it, and anyway, so that's where we are. We get to here, the 18th. I'm in my 30-day window and it's all ticking away. And between the phone call yesterday and a bit of a medication, knockout, no video yesterday. What I did want to do is come back to you today and talk a little bit more about this, the 5K plan, and how I think I'm going to implement it, because that's something I said that was a little bit of work that I needed to do further, and I want to specifically look at what's going on here in this first window. So where I'm sitting now, and I am definitely a pen and paper organizer. I know there are some people that use apps and computers and stuff. I'm not. There is nothing better for me than a good old pen with different coloured pens and paper that you can screw up and rub out and just try and work it out and map it all out as well. So let me know if you are a pen and paper budgeter, planner, organiser, etc. down below. Now, I think the bulk of the 17th to the 28th of April is going to be taken up by listing and organising the existing items. So I've got, in terms of the rooms themselves, I've got the garage, which is where all of the car boot things are being stored that I want to process through. And then I've also got the conservatory as the two main rooms that I'm focusing on. Anything that's in there at the minute is in there to be sorted and listed anyway. And then I've also got the walk-in wardrobe, which is the closet in this room that I film in here. I say walk-in wardrobe, it's not very big at all, and it could do with being knocked out and the room being bigger because it's a room fit for a toddler and no one else really. Because what I'm really conscious of is when I am back at work from the 28th of April, so here, is that my afternoons and evenings may be spent up with follow-up doctor's appointments, rest and recovery from the day because I'm going to be on half days only, less so on actually photographing and processing. I'll ship out any orders, etc. But we're also, at the minute, this is going to be what I call the down period for online selling, and it's typically the week leading up to payday. Now, the weekend here is a payday weekend in the UK for most people that get paid on the last Friday or something like that, or around about the 28th, etc. So I'm anticipating an uptick of orders. So I think what the plan for this coming week is, and certainly this weekend, is to try and process and photograph and build a draft bank as much as possible of things, and then I go ahead and activate them each day. eBay listings, I've worked out, take a lot of time, and I need to factor that in as well. So what I think is going to happen is that the eBay listings are going to be like the evening on the laptop job. And then the photography, stop shaking. The mount for this has become less stable, and the amount of camera shake is quite frustrating. And then the photography is going to have to be a daytime job. What I'm starting to do as well, because I've now got to have this really fine balance, if I can't overdo it energy-wise too much this week, or I will wipe myself out for here. So although I've gone in and put in car boots as a question mark, they're already forecasting super heavy rain, 100% all day on the Sunday, so I'm going to give it a miss. And then I've got no one to do it with me on the bank holiday Monday, so I'm going to give that a miss as well, just because I'm not at my peak at the minute, and me trying to do a car boot solo, means that I need more awareness and more like being on my feet than I currently do already. And we've already discussed the issues around me doing that the day before I go, hopefully, back to school. Here's me building everything up for a really good last day, like a really good return in the end of April. And yeah, I just hope it happens and goes ahead and happens. I really, really do. A couple of teachers and ex-teachers have mentioned in my comments the fact that if I'm on a phased return, I should be on full pay. Until I see, I'd love that. I really would. I haven't been shown a policy that confirms that though, and I have very little trust in my school. So I'm still going to work to the fact that I'm going to be on half pay, less sick pay. So about a £1,200 take home for May going into June. And I'm also assuming as well that I'm going to be on a phased return for most of the month. A week of that is half term, which is going to be lovely. So we do get a bit of a break at the end of May. And then we roll into June and July as kind of a last ditch thing. All of those events that are happening does mean that I just want to be able to, in the evenings, particularly on this first week back here, go through and activate the draft listings that I've set up and created here. So what I'm tempted to do, because as well I have got that pay, I will be getting paid 30th. I will be getting paid on the 30th, so I have just got to tick over and see, and if I can stretch Bo's medication out and roll it onto next month as well, that it gives me a bit more of a rollover as well, plus the 600, which I want to try and see if I can continually roll over as well. So there's a lot that's melting around in the minute. I don't know if I'm going to get a sourcing opportunity along here. For some reason I had in my head when I said that here on my last video, for some reason this week already feels really long, like it feels like it's a 10-day week, even though it's not. Does anyone get that sometimes when you're looking ahead and you can't quite structure out time very well? You just know that it's there stretching out in front of you. And actually, I forgot about Easter Monday. Oh, and happy Good Friday to those of you that celebrate. So I've got the garage, conservatory and the walk-in wardrobe. These are my focus areas. And these are different to zones because everything that's in these areas anyway are hobbies and things that I work on or where I store stuff to sell. The eBay listings are going to have to be in the evening on the laptop because they are so long to do. I sat there today and tried to get a little bit done and I was like, I'm not making any progress on this whatsoever. Why do they want so much information? Unreal. Photography is going to have to be a daytime job, as I've discussed, and then I need... If I can get the draft bank full of, as in I have photographed, it's either listed or it's in a draft of everything that I need to and had already planned to list on Vinted or eBay or take to the car boot by the end of the 28th, that's a lot of stuff. Like I can't quite put into context how much stuff that is. And obviously I've got to manage myself within the meantime as well. So I want a draft bank full of everything all listed. That was pre-planned. This mount is not stable because I used to be able to write on here fine without. So this mount is mounted onto this, which is a separate piece which sits on the desk, which the only thing I'm touching right now is this, and I used to be able to write without this shaking. That's rather frustrating because I can't afford to get a different one of these right now. That was pre-planned to sell anyway. I would love to be able to... can I? Can't I? The thing is, things sell at different speeds. So there was me literally just having a flash thought of I'm going to let it all sit in the Vinted account and see when it's all said and done how much it sells for. But I've had stuff sit on there for weeks before and all of a sudden it sells, having previously no interest. And I know that this is something that I'm going to have to dip in and use throughout the time. And again, we are hopeful we are all crossing our fingers and thumbs and our toes and every appendage possible that I have somewhere to stay and I know what's going on here. But like I said, the plan is still very much to go ahead and act as though we're going to have to move, which I'm not overly thrilled about at all. Because as well, I may need to stock up on postage supplies, like mailer bags and stuff. So I may need to stock up on postage supplies as well. I've been doing really well. I've actually cancelled my Amazon Prime this month, and yet this may be something that I need to reactivate it for because it's generally cheaper to get from there. So I need to stock up on postage supplies, possibly, definitely tape. I go through tape so quickly. And then what I'm not going to do is schedule in a spring clean around here, which is what I would normally have done. Like, I try to, every kind of holiday or school holiday or school term, go ahead and schedule in like a deep clean of the house or a spring clean of the house. I'm not fit enough to do that at the minute. And also, if I'm tracking and moving things in and out, photographing things, moving things around, processing them, it's a bit of a working pit of chaos at the minute. And the best thing to do is just let me work through that, and as those things reduce, go ahead and just deep clean that area as we go. So that's the plan for then, is to actually focus on the draft and the listings themselves rather than necessarily trying to sell through them all quickly this week, because I'm expecting a lull. So if I can go ahead and launch quite a few items this weekend in time for payday, that should help then. So in reality, I'm not expecting to see a lot of day-to-day vintage sales really until about the Friday, the 25th being a common pay date for most people in the UK, and then this weekend leading up to the end of April. I could be completely wrong and people have spent all their money on Easter eggs, which have gotten horrendously overpriced all of a sudden, or not. When we then get into this 29th of April to the 16th of May, what I am tempted to try and do, because I have got this Warner Brothers studio tour, which is fantastic and well worth doing, but like I said, booked months ago, where, for context, when I booked it at the time, I was still doing my masters and hadn't decided to give it up. So I would have, if I was still doing my masters as well, talk about hindsight, although I'm not well enough to do it, I would have received this weekend a student loan payment, which meant that after I paid my fees, I would have been able to keep £3,800. I've dropped out of my student loan. I dropped out of my masters at Christmas and received one kind of layover last payment in January, which was a lovely surprise. But I knew that I wouldn't be getting one in April, which is why I never kind of mentioned it or referred to it. But back when I booked these tickets, I was. And I remember saying to my sister at the time, like, we're going to go ham in the gift shop. I'm not going to be going ham in the gift shop. But I know we discussed the fact that when we've gone previously, we've never eaten there. We've not done the butterbeer. We've purely done the tour itself. We mentioned the fact that we were going to do this stuff. So what I'm actually tempted to do for this kind of, from this weekend probably, is go ahead and actually do a small savings challenge. So have I got, so either do like the £1 challenge, which is like the Opal challenge, this is one of mine, that's available on my Shopify, or do a little spring savings. I think each one is a £5. Yeah, that's one of mine as well. I go ahead and try and see if I can just do a couple of those so I can kind of take that money with me as a certain amount. It's not a priority, but it's something that I can see creeping up on me, and then me there going, oh, where am I going to pull that from and what I'm going to do. I have got some buy me a coffee and coffee donations coming in at some point, but I think they're going to clear in around here. Buy me a coffee, I think, takes like a week longer to process, and the bank holiday is going to slow that down as well. So I'm not expecting to see any money from buy me a coffee until the beginning of May, by which point as well, hopefully we'll know what's going on, and then I can look and see, because that will form part of the 1,000 that I want to bring in for May's bills. in terms of there's a lot of tracking going on, yes, there is, because it is very much split. Like, I discussed in my last video my general distaste for moving on to a rolling contract, and it's because there's the insecurity of I could just get given 2 months' notice at any time. And that's very much why I'm sitting here thinking, right, I feel like it is reasonable to, from my perspective, to not follow up and chase next week at all. The letting agent have sent their legal letter. It's clearly an issue that they're aware of and ongoing, and I appear to be one of many tenants who this is affecting. However, from the 29th, I do need to be aggressively chasing and discussing with, I guess, people who are stakeholders in my life, like my parents, who would be the ones, if I had to move, realistically, they're the ones coming to help me do a deep clean. They're the ones coming to help me pack up. My dad would be someone who I'd literally be dragging along by the ear, whether he wants to or not, to the car boot sales and stuff to have that clear out with me. So those are the people who are going to be there and involved. Someone like my brother as well, who kind of would come over and help me pack up. The remaining set of grandparents that I've got, who would inevitably want to quote unquote help out in a well-meaning but in the not very helpful way. So I would need to start having those conversations with the stakeholders in my life about whether actually I do stay put and just ride it out but prep to move, or do we look at moving or not, because those are conversations you do need to have with stakeholders in your life, regardless of the relationship sometimes that you have with them. I would need help from these people in a practical sense, even if they're not prepared to help in a financial sense, and that's something which is quite often a really hard thing to discuss and isn't really discussed on budgeting channels. I think there's a general assumption that you can move in back in with family, or that there is a network there to support you, and while that network may be there to support you physically, that network either might not be prepared to or can't support you financially either. And it's sometimes a really difficult thing that you don't want to come on and discuss, because it just is an indicator that life isn't what you thought it would be, and the family setup that you thought you had isn't there. But I'll to a certain extent, it's something I'll come on and talk about if I can, and providing it doesn't obviously give away the privacy and identities of those stakeholders and those individuals. Those stakeholders and individuals are also on a once in a lifetime big international holiday at the minute, and have been this entire time, so they're not here. And when they are here and they are back, they will be also, I know, wanting to kind of go right and asking me questions or what's going on. I'm going to have no answers really for them. So I hope that by the 29th I do have answers, and I hope that on the run up to the 16th of May we will know as a channel and as a collective and as a wonderful group of budgeting people that actually, do you know what, we can go for the OR option. I do want I don't, like, I was quite serious last video. I don't want to be renting any. If I'm renting here for another year, I will want to treat it like it's my last year. And within the income that I do have, which I know is incredibly tight anyway, even on a normal month, hence why we're trying to build something a bit larger, I would want to know that this is the year, this is the letting calendar year in terms of the time that I rent, where my credit report is cleaned up, all bar, if I can't get all of my debt done, a tiny amount of my debt done, ready to look at something like shared ownership or the purchase of something next year. And that's a massive, massive focus. It'll be the biggest thing I've focused on so far. And it's why actually you kind of have to come back and do a second video and go, I know I've briefly discussed this, but actually I need to break it down a little bit more, because there may be a time in 5 or 6 videos time where I mention something and I might need you guys in the comments who are here every week going, no, hang on, we discussed this, you told us you were doing this, you need to go back and do this, rewatch your video 5 or 6 videos ago because you said this, you've gone on a side quest, you've got distracted, something's happened, come back to this. Because that happens all the time. Like in life, with me, with you, with someone else around you, someone will go on a side quest and then you're like, yeah, but hang on, weren't we doing this? and I very much need to stick to like this because I will also forget. What I'm probably going to do as well, see, I don't know whether I should track the sales as they come in or the actual money as it clears in. I'm going to track the sales from, because money as it clears in could be, I've kind of in my head got a cutoff point in terms of when do I start the 5,000. Any money that's clearing in from today in terms of cash into my account was all previous sales from this last 2-week period, so before I started this target. So what I'm actually tempted to do is track it by sales. So on the day I sell something, this is how much I've sold, rather than the actual money in my account as well, because that's going to be a bit easier. The only exception to that will be coffee, buy me a coffee donations, etc., because they are on a slightly longer processing time, particularly over this bank holiday period as well. So I want to put those towards the totals, and I did kind of reduce my vintage shop drastically and then reset it and restart again. So that is where I'm going to leave it. Just a little bit more of a casual discussion after this video, so it's not drama filled. I want to reiterate, this is not a drama budgeting channel where my life is just horrendously dramatic. It may feel like it sometimes, and it may feel like there's always something going on. Day to day, it's not that bad. It's just at the minute, everything does just seem wrapped up in what's going on financially. And I've not even done a video yet about how ridiculous it is that you're stuck between a rock and a hard place if you are, if you don't have the savings to be off sick, basically. Which is another video before I go off on a tangent, and this one runs horrendously long. I am going to call it a night from a filming perspective. I have a fair amount of energy this evening, so I'm actually going to go ahead and do some more photography and get some listings drafted while I have the oomph in me. And I will see you all possibly tomorrow. If not, it'll be Easter Sunday, in which case happy Easter if I don't speak to you before now and then. I'm going to love you and leave you. All of the links are in the description. Brilliant. Down below, and have a fantastic budgeting week wherever you are in the world. Happy Good Friday. Bye bye for now.